Hi everyone, welcome to another Let's Code. Today we're going to continue the chat application. So on the last video in this series, I started doing a chat application from scratch using Ruby, JavaScript, of course, because it's a browser, and also Redis as the database for the messages. And it's a real-time chat, like one would expect. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to change this application. So if you take a look at the code, and here I have it. So let me open the code editor. And don't worry if you haven't watched the latest video, the previous video, I mean, because it's not necessary. What I'm going to do today is convert this big HTML file into a couple of other files. So I'm going to split these up because this will very quickly become a big mess. And I'm going to start using Vue Js. So Vue Js, if you don't know what it is, it's Vue Js, the JavaScript framework similar to React. And I prefer Vue Js mostly because it's what I've learned and I made applications using it. And it's really nice to do applications with it. And yeah, so we're going to use it. We're going to install Webpack. If you don't know what it is, you're going to learn about it in a few. And so let's get started. So the first thing, I wanted to show you, just briefly recap what was done the last week. So we have this chat application. So if I open using I have this BE shortcut, but it's bundle exec to run the server on this port number. So I'm going to refresh here and you can see the chat application. So recapping, it's just a instant like real-time chat application. And you can just type in your username and say hello, folks. And then you send here and you see on both screens, and then you can say something back to that other person. So it's very simple. It doesn't have like user authentication and stuff. My plan is to look at those things in a video in the future, not right now. I'm gonna focus on different things now. So as I said, today I'm gonna convert it to Vue because it's really starting to get really messy. So this is all our JavaScript here, and it's well, it's not organized. I'm really not happy with this. And what you're gonna see, I hope, is that when using Vue Js, things are just so much easy to do. So let's get started. And I'm gonna close this and I'm gonna open a new tab. And well, I'm gonna need to run Node.js. And for that, I don't have a nvm rc file. I thought I had. So I'm going to create this nvm rc file. And this is going to dictate my JavaScript version for Node.js. Actually, my Node.js version for JavaScript. I said it the other way around. But first, I have to go and check the versions that I have here. So I think there's a list command somewhere. List installed versions. So nvm ls, I'm going to see I have these versions installed, and I'm going to use this 14 dot something version. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this nmvrc file and just paste this version number here, and I'm going to use nvm. I think I'm saying nmv, but it's nvm. So NVM stands for Node Version Manager. So I'm going to type in nvm use, and it is going to read the node version from the nvmrc file. And now if I run node -v, it's running exactly that version. So if you don't know what nvm is, nvm, it's exactly these repos are in GitHub. So you can go ahead and look at this page. If you don't have it installed already, I totally recommend it. And its node version manager is basically the same thing that RBEnv does for Ruby. So it lets you have different versions of node install simultaneously and on your system. And yeah, so I can specify the version here, and I'm already using it. So far, so nice. So next step to separate my front end is to initialize. So I'm going to type in npm init. So this is going to kind of initialize a JavaScript project here. And it's going to ask me a few questions. I'm just going to press return to all of them. I don't want to really answer. They're not really important right now. And if you see here, it has created this package JSON file. So I'm going to open it, and it's, well, it's a JSON file, of course. And this is equivalent, if you don't know JavaScript, this is equivalent to the gem file in Ruby. So they're kind of the same thing. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to install a few packages. So we can see this file changing. There you go. So I'm going to install some packages. So I'm going to use npm install. And I have to use save dev because I want to tell npm to actually save these dependencies in the package.json file. And what I want to install here is Webpack. I'm going to need also Webpack CLI. I'm probably going to need more stuff. Definitely, I'm going to need a Vue loader. And if I forget something later on, I can go and look ahead. Install the other dependencies. So this is going to take a while. Yeah, that's quite fast. And if you look here in dev dependencies, now we have this. It's saying that I need the dependency called Vue loader, that if you go to like npm.js, which is the repository for these packages, and if you look and if you search for Vue loader, for instance, you're going to see that, well, this is the latest version, which is exactly what I have here because I just installed it. And yeah, you can see the package here is going to have some description and everything, how to use it. And the same applies for Webpack and Webpack CLI and any other package that you have. So having that, now I have Webpack, which is going to be the build tool for all JavaScript content. I want to now install the main dependency that is going to be, so npm install my save, it's going to be Vue. So this time I'm going to use -save instead of -save dev. And instead of putting in the dev dependencies, it is going to put in a list called dependencies. And the difference between this one and this one is that kind of like these dependencies are going to be used in the browser. So they're going to go to the final file that is going to be executed on the user web browser, while these dependencies, they won't be executed in the browser at all. They're going to be executed here in the command line. So they're kind of dependencies to build the whole thing. So for instance, Webpack is just a tool that we can use to build a given set of JavaScript files and Vue Js, Vue template files into one final .js file. And yeah, so let's talk less and do more. And next thing, I'm gonna start a folder. So I'm gonna use mkdir for creating a new folder, which I'm gonna then create a file in there called index.js. Also, I want like an output folder where I'm gonna put my JavaScript. That is gonna hold the compiled JavaScript. So this is gonna be, so src is gonna be the source files of JavaScript, and inside the public JS are gonna be the output files, so the compiled JavaScript. And for now, just for the sake of testing this, I'm gonna type in console log hello world. And if I now run Webpack, and in order to run Webpack, I'm gonna use npx Webpack. And what are the flags? Well, I think if I just run it like this, yeah, I want to pass the mode. So mode, I have to pass the command and then the mode, which is going to be development. There you go. So it generated this folder called dist, and inside there is the, so this is the generated code from that index.js file. And because this is a file meant for development, it has all this weird stuff inside here. But yeah, let's not care much about that. But we want to change one thing here. We want to change the output. So I don't want this file inside the dist folder. Instead, I want it inside a public JS folder. So I'm going to already create a new file, which is going to be webpack.conf.js. So this name is important because it's the default name for a Webpack configuration file, which I'm going to open here. And what this is going to do, so it's always going to have this format of module exports. And I want to write the output. And I'm going to need one dependency. So path here is a kind of a standard library of Node.js. It's going to have one helper function that I'm going to use here, which is I'm going to do public.js. So let me do this. Cool. So let me first remove this dist folder and run it again. So it should pick up this file already without me having to specify it. Nah, it didn't work. So maybe I have to pass like this. Yes. There's probably something wrong with the name. Maybe it's not conf, maybe it's config, I don't know. But so I want to remove this. And you can see here in the public folder, there's the main.js. And what I did here is I run Webpack. I told it to build our stuff. And I am telling here that the mode is the development instead of production, because we are going to use this file now for development. And this -c is just saying, please use this configuration file for Webpack. And this is the configuration file. And what it's telling is that the output is essentially telling that the output of the build is going to go inside this path over here. And what this path resolves does is that it just expands this relative path into a full path. And it's, I don't think this is 100% necessary, but it avoids problems in the future. So I always use it. I recommend using it. That's why it's just a little bit more code there. So now we have a hello world there, and well, next step we're gonna do is to run it. So I'm gonna come back here to my Ruby thing, and switching to the other tab, I'm gonna run the server on this port number. So going back, yeah, just a matter of refreshing, and I'm gonna press, well, I'm gonna go here, open the element inspector. I could have pressed, I think it's Command Option I if you're using a Mac. You just show and hide that thing. Cool. So in our console, we don't see the hello world that we were supposed to see. And of course, because we are not including that file anywhere. So what you're going to do is we're going to change this index file, and we're going to include that hello world. And the place I'm going to include it is at the very bottom of the index file, just before the end of the body. So I'm going to type in script, and there we go. And I'm gonna, I think it's href, it's gonna take this file from /js/main.js. So this path is exactly this main file over here, and the reason the public name is not here is because the browser is gonna it's gonna be relative to the public folder already. So you cannot the user cannot escape outside the public folder. Everything has to be contained inside. So public is kind of the root folder, and then the first folder inside it is the JS folder. That's why. So if I just refresh, I think it's not gonna work because we can go here. Oh, it worked. Yeah, it worked because yeah, I thought it wasn't going to work because, well, if I refresh, where is my hello world? Yeah, I think the mistake I made is that this is src maybe. Yes. So yeah, src instead of href. And yeah, I thought it was not going to work because we didn't tell Sinatra that it was supposed to pick up that folder. And yeah, but otherwise we would have done like here in Sinatra, because the server that is serving this folder is, after all, is Sinatra. So public, I think it's public folder. I always have to Google this stuff. Public folder, Sinatra. Yeah, it's public folder. So there you go. So you can set what is going to be like a public folder. So if I put here public folder, it's going to be the folder called public, and I restart the server. Well, it's not going to change anything because the default setting for Sinatra is already public. So this is just redundant. I like to have this here despite the redundancy, because they may change this in different versions of Sinatra, and if I have it here, it's not going to break already. So what it's going to do is going to do like, if somebody tries to, you see here there's a request to the JS main file, and Sinatra is gonna serve that file. So that's the only thing it's doing. And yeah, well, let me open the console again. So there you go, hello world. It means that this file is being executed. And if I change here, like putting more exclamation marks, and if I save it and I reload, and here I am reloading with not only Command R, but rather Command Shift R, which is like right clicking here and clicking hard reload, because it's gonna force this file to be refreshed. So we see nothing has changed here, and the reason is because we have to always build this file. So once the source file changed, we have to recompile it, rerun the build. So I'm gonna run this again, and if I come here and refresh, there we go. Now we have the exclamation marks. So since rebuilding is going to be something that we're going to be doing very often, I'm just going to pass another flag here. I could put it in the end. It's called watch. And what watch is going to do is, now you see that this command didn't finish, and in fact it's never going to finish. So you have to press Control-C if you want to finish it, or if you want to interrupt it. And once you make any change here, for instance, changing this to header, we already see some output here. And if you refresh, it's already going to be here. So you can, it's just easier for developing. So for instance, I change to lowercase, and there you go. Changes are applied. Yeah, changes are applying fast because our source base is just very small, and this compilation takes 11 milliseconds. Yeah, that's pretty fast. Next step, what are we gonna do? We are gonna do a little bit more. So since we listed in the package.json file the Vue dependency, I'm gonna now use it. So I'm gonna say import Vue from Vue, and I'm gonna put this in the console log and refresh, and there you go. So Vue is a function. So Yeah, so now I want to start building my view. So it's a view. And for the sake of having a little bit more organization here, and also we need another file, I'm gonna create a new folder called views. I could use a rather different name, but well, I'm gonna use views just for the sake of it. And I'm gonna use app.view, and I like to use it uppercase when I'm using .view files. It's just a convention that I have here. So if I type in, at least in my code editor template, it's already gonna do this. So I'm gonna have a nice Vue Js thing over here. And the first thing I have to do, I have to declare this data thing, and and then I can put a div inside here and say hello world. I'm going to remove this class. Hello world. So if I refresh, of course, nothing is going to happen. And the next thing to start moving this file over here to Vue.js is to, so this is a .erb file, which means it is a template, it's kind of a Ruby template, and it's being rendered by Ruby. Although there is no, there's no templates in here at all. This is just a plain static file. A template would be kind of something like, I don't know, chat application would be something like this, and then you can use some variable from Ruby here, and this would you would set this in the Ruby code, and it would just act like a template, so replacing variables inside here. So since we are not using this at all, this is just a static file after all. And we're going to stop using this file, but I'm not going to delete it now. Instead, I'm going to go to public, and I'm going to create a new file called index.html. And I'm going to type in HTML, and it's already going to do some, well, actually, I'm not going to use this because I can just come over here and rather copy this thing and paste it here. And I just have to close the body and close the HTML tag. And there we go. I'm going to say hi there. And another thing to change here. So this file is already accessible. If I, instead of going to this path, I go to /index.html, you're gonna see there, hi there. And if I inspect the source code, it's exactly what I had in the code editor. And I just realized that this thing doesn't have a title. Chat application. Awesome. Well, Chrome doesn't even show the title over here. Yeah, because this is the wrong file. Damn. There you go. Well, what we want to do now is to change. So I'm going to go to server, and instead of serving this ERB index file, we are going to serve this index.html file. So I'm going to say file read and public index.html. So whenever a user hits this endpoint, what this is going to do is going to read the contents of index.html, and it's going to serve that file. That's it. So it's very, very simple stuff. We'll restart the server, refresh, and you can see now it's working. So I can either access this from here, or I can also exit from here. I'm going to just exit from here because it just makes more sense. Cool. So what we are going to do next? Well, we want first to copy this JavaScript entry and put it also here. So if I have this open and I refresh the page, it's already showing my header that is in the index.js file. And if I remove this, there you go. So header in both places. Well, look at that. Well, now I want to show something different. I want to show this hello world. And to do that, I have to require this app file. So let's import what I'm going to call app, what could be just called like anything you want. I'm going to call it app from views, that's plural. And the name of the file is app.view. So is this gonna work? Let's check the build over here. So yeah, as you can see, there's some error, module not found, blah blah blah, cannot resolve views app view. I think that's because I have to do it like this. Okay, now it resolved the file, so it found the file, but it's saying that I need an appropriate loader to handle this file type. So the reason for this is that since this is a .view file, and as you can see, it has kind of a different structure. It is so Webpack doesn't know how to compile this, and we have to tell Webpack how to compile this. And to do that, I'm gonna open the Webpack configuration file, and here is a little bit of copy pasting that I'm gonna do because this is just standard, the standard way to do it for Vue Js. And what you have to do, you have to go like modules. Actually, it's singular. So module is gonna have a few rules, and so there's gonna be an array of rules. And I don't expect to explain all this Webpack in detail, but what I'm doing here is I'm telling, so this is going to be a regular expression, and I'm going to tell that any file ending with .view is going to use the view loader loader. So this view loader over here is the same view loader declared here in the dev dependencies. So that's why you need this installed. If I, so I have to stop the build and run it again. I want to just for a while remove this watch thing. So this is gonna fail. And this is because we need this Vue loader plugin. So just gonna require that. And this is Vue loader /lib/ the plugin. So here's the Vue loader plugin. And it's just a matter of instantiating it here and running the build again. Yeah, so there we go. I forgot this dependency. So I'm going to install it now. npm install -- save dev. It's going to install the Vue template compiler. So Vue template. So this is a Vue template. It's .view files are Vue templates, and the thing that actually compiles it is this dependency here. So once installed, I can just build again, and there you go. So it's working again. I'm gonna add the watch. Cool. So yeah, if I refresh, nothing happens. That's because we are not telling anything to happen. But I can already, like, instead of printing hi there, I could print the app just to see what's in there. And it seems like the app is just kind of a dictionary of values, just a JavaScript object. And yeah, this really doesn't matter. It's totally not important. And what we need to do now is to initialize the Vue application and kind of mount this application to the screen somewhere. So in order to do that, new Vue, and I'm gonna say app, and then L is gonna be, and here we need an element where this is gonna be mounted upon, and I'm gonna call this app container. So this app container is gonna be inside the index.html file. So it's going to be a div, and app container is going to be the ID of this div. That is why I'm referring to this file using the hashtag symbol. And I'm going to leave this header here, and this div is going to be empty. And when I run this now I see the hello world. So this hello world is actually coming from the app view thing. And if I inspect now, so what I did here is that you can click this button and click over the element, or you can press Command Shift C, and it's gonna just do the same thing. So you click here, and you're gonna see that we have this header, and then we have the div. And so Vue Js removed all attributes and everything that would have been inside it. Vue Js removes it because it kind of takes ownership of that of this element. So it is saying it put some data stuff here which doesn't really matter for us, and it removed the ID. So we didn't want to use that ID. It was used already for its purpose, and it mounted the hello world thing. So you see that this is a div, and now you might ask yourself, well, there's a div here and there's a div here. Which div is that? Well, if we change this div to like span, we are gonna quickly see that now this is a span. So that means that Vue.js is overriding that element. So back to div. Cool. So now this is I'm gonna remove this header. So this is now the very basic structure of a Vue.js application. And what I'm going to do next is to migrate. So let's migrate all these, where is it? All this index or ERB file to this index, to the app.vue file, because this is where the app is going to live from now on. So I'm going to start by just copying the contents of body, which is just this basic structure over here. Remove the hello world. And as you might be tempted to remove these divs, I want to tell you that you cannot do that, because there has to be exactly one element that is child to the template. So there has to be only one element here. So this element cannot have siblings. You couldn't have another element here. This would be an error. So that's why all of this has to be contained inside a div or something else. So I'm gonna save this and reload the page, and you're gonna see that already the structure of the application is there. And what I'm gonna do next is to copy the JavaScript. So this is all the HTML structure of the application right now, and this is all the JavaScript of it. So I'm gonna just come over here and select everything, copy it to this place over here, and I'm gonna put all this inside a function called mounted, and I have to close that function declaration here. And now if I refresh, I'm gonna see that the chat is already working. So already working. So if I test message here, there you go. So it's just working fine. And you could think that now the migration is finished. Well, in fact, it is. In fact, it is now using Vue Js, but it's a very lame way to put JavaScript inside here like this. So the next step is going to be to do this the proper Vue Js way of doing things. So before I hop into that, I just want to delete this index ERB file. And in fact, if you see, so I'm gonna use this this terminal. I'm gonna do rm of the views folder, which contained that ERB file, and just this views folder was not that one, as you might have seen. And yeah, continues to work. Of course, I have to start my server. Where is my terminal? Here. So of course I have to run the server. Yeah, so there you go. It's just working. And yeah, next step is to then make this in a proper way, in a proper Vue.js way of doing things. So I would say that this is the most value of this video would be how to change this and this structure and also this JavaScript in order for it to be a proper Vue.js application. Okay, so let's get started with it. And the first, so the place I'm gonna start with all this mess, so to say, is with this function that checks new messages. So if I just come over here and I comment all this function and I refresh, you're gonna see that there are gonna be no messages over there because all the messages are being fetched here when the application starts. Yeah, so I'm gonna remove this function, all this, so this is the function declaration, and here it is being called for the first time, and then a timer that periodically checks if there are new messages. So I'm gonna remove this chunk, and I'm gonna create here something called methods. So methods is it has to be this name, exactly this name, because this is how Vue.js dictates this. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna paste this here, and now instead of declaring this method like this, I'm gonna just change it like this and have some better, yeah, that's better. So now I have a method check new messages, and I'm not gonna change the code that much. I'm gonna change, I'm gonna have to make some changes, but this is fine. And this code over here, in fact this code, it stays here because this mounted thing is also from Vue.js, and it is called, so this is called when this component, so this whole thing here, this whole file, it is a Vue.js component, and whenever a component is mounted, which means it now has some place in the browser, in the DOM structure, in the HTML structure. So whenever that happens, this is going to be called, which means in practical terms, it's going to be called once at the beginning of the application. So that's where we can do some initialization. So it's going to check new messages. However, since this method is now declared here, we have to use this dot check new messages. So this is going to call this. And also here, we're going to use this check new messages. And this is this would already be working, but we have to change this process messages response, which also has to be called this, because this is now going to be declared down here inside this methods thing. So here is the function definition. I'm going to just move it over here and do it like this, just organizing a little bit. And now so the next thing that is missing here is that we have this latest cursor variable, and it's being initialized with 0. So this was kind of a global state, and now to maintain this state, we have to declare this variable inside this data. So latest cursor is going to be initialized with the value 0. I'll just like to put a colon in the end. a comma, not a column. And every time we use it, which also means this one, we now have to refer to this dot latest cursor, which is going to refer to this value over there. So yeah, if I run this now, it's probably already going to work. So let me check. Nah, something went wrong. It's probably on the console. Yeah, there we go. So the insert message in screen function is not defined because it is defined here, but here is in a different scope. So we have to also, so every function is gonna have to be inside the methods object. So it's gonna be the same thing for this guy over here. And yeah, do it like that. And if we're using, no, we are not using anything, any local variable from the, any global variables inside this. So this is now, oh, there you go. So the problem, of course, yeah, since it's now here, I have to call it like this dot insert message in screen. And now it's complaining that chat container is not declared. So chat container was previously declared here. So I'm going to copy this and put it here because it's being used there. So chat container is the chat container data name, which is this div element over here. So there you go. Now it's working. So yeah, this is of course not the final version of this, but it's already getting better. So as you see, we removed some code over here, and now we have just two. Well, what we have left, let just me do this. Okay, what we have left is the what's happening when the button is clicked. So I'm gonna take this from here and put it in a new method. I'm gonna call onSendClick. So it's gonna be the idea is that this method is going to be called whenever somebody clicks the send button. So the send button. And this thing here is using these two folks over here. So username input, and the message content message input. So this message input, I'm going to move it to here. The chat container is not being used anymore, and in order to bind this event to the button, we are going to do it in a slightly different way. So this reduces the initialization function to only this, and let's do it like this. And if we refresh, no errors, it's all fine. And the send button is not gonna do anything. So of course, because it's not bound to this onSendClick. So now the way that Vue Js handles events like this is that you declare a property called @click. So this is gonna tell whenever a click event happens in this button, please call the onSendClick function. So refresh and send another test message and click send. There you go, another test message. So great, this is working, and the message is still here. So since we don't need this data name anymore, because we were only using this to be able to refer to this button in order to be able to bind an event for it. Since the event is now being bound just with this line of code, we can just go ahead and remove it. And there you go. So let's start removing some more things. So we have the username. So username is being used. This one here refers to a different username. So this username is being referred to here. So we get the element, and then we get the value of the element. Well, what Vue Js allows us to do, and that is in fact the way, I'd say the best way to do it, is that we can remove this data name because we won't be needing it anymore. And we do, this is, I think this is called V model. V model is gonna be the username, and this value is not gonna be used anymore, at least not here. So V model is also something from Vue Js. So Vue Js is gonna handle this. And what this is saying is that please use, for this input, use the value that is stored in the username variable. And whenever the user changes the input, here is also gonna update this variable. So this variable along with the value of the input, they're gonna remain always in sync. And I want a comma there. So you see Mark, and if I change this to like, I don't know, Jane, it's gonna be Jane. And now the way that we do this is, instead of referring whenever we want to send a message and then we need to fetch the name of the user, instead of referring to the element that stores the name of the user, we're going to refer to this variable. So this is what's happening here. Let username be the username input, and this is in fact being used here. And if we do this.username, I can remove this, and I can remove the input of the username, because now this is referring to this username over here, which is being also updated in this input. So this is just much more simple than the way we were doing before. So let's go ahead and also do this for the message input. So we have here message input, and it is being used also here to fetch the content of the message. And as you have guessed already, we have the message content here, and we are gonna just have this local variable, and we can remove all this. And now that we are using this variable, let's first create it, and we must declare this. So this is gonna be an empty string, and even though it's an empty string, we have to declare this variable over here because Vue Js demands that we do it like that. So message content, and then the only thing we're missing is that we have to actually use the V model to bind the data in this input with the message content. So if I now refresh and go like more testing, and if I click send, it sends the message. And now for something fancy. So I have a problem with me clicking send and the message still remains inside this thing over here. So I want to clean the value that is inside here. And with Vue Js, with the way we are doing here, is actually going to be very, very, very easy to do so. So I only want to clean the content of it whenever the message is successfully delivered to the server, because I don't want the user to, I don't know, lose the message or something. So yeah, so it's going to be here because this is an error condition, this is an error as well. So the else here is when the message is successfully delivered. So we're only gonna do this. So very simple. We change the value of this variable, it is automatically gonna change the value inside the input. And to do that, let's just make a test. So believe me that is gonna happen. So send, and there you go. It's now cleaning the content of the message. Would have been much more work if it wouldn't be for Vue Js. So making life easy. And now for the last thing, that is kind of the elephant in the room over here, is the most complex code, I would say, is this thing over here. So this is the code that inserts, so whenever there is a new message coming from the server, this function is being called, because this function is gonna create an entry here in the HTML. So what this function is manually doing with, let me count, almost 20 lines of code here. It is manually creating this div and this div and this div, and then putting this div inside this one and this inside this one, and so on, putting the classes, writing the content inside and everything. So it's a very manual thing, and well, this is only 20 lines because this is a very simple structure here for one message, but yeah, you can guess that would quickly become more complicated. I mean, the code would get much more complicated if we wouldn't be using, if you would do it this way. Like if you do a more complex structure using HTML, the code would be, I don't know, like exponentially more complicated. So let's convert this to Vue. And to do that, I'm gonna delete this and paste it inside the chat text container, because this is the container that is holding all the messages. And I pasted it just for a reference, because I want to see the structure that it is creating. So first thing is creating this wrapper div, which has this class. So I'm going to create a div here, which is going to have this class. So this div is exactly this thing over here. And the username div is going to be a div with this class. So I'm going to create it here. Let me already do this. And there's going to be one more div here with the class of the text message. So, oops. So yeah, so this is going to be one message, one chat message. And it's going to hold the username, it's going to hold the text, the content of the message. And yeah, so basically we also need now the content. We need to put some content here. And to put the username here, we're going to do this syntax, which is going to tell message.username. And here it's going to be message dot, I'm going to call it message content. Oops. So now I can delete this thing. I want to save this though, so I'm going to save it for later, and then we can delete this. And the way that Vue does is that Vue is very declarative, and this thing we don't need as well, because we won't be referring to this div over here. And so this div is going to be, there's going to be one div of this for each message. So we need kind of a loop here. And the way that works in Vue is we use a for loop. So v4, or is it, no, I think it's v4. And we say message in messages. So messages is going to be an array of messages, and message is going to be this variable here. So this is going to iterate over all messages inside this variable, which we are going to create here. And it's going to be an empty array of messages. So if we just refresh the application, nothing is happening. And now the code that was, that very complex code is now going to be very simple. And what it's going to do is it is going to take this messages array and is going to insert one element inside. And this element is going to contain a username, which is going to be from the server called username, and the message content, So it's gonna just add one value to the array, and there you go. So it's already working. Because you see, Vue is all reactive, so whenever we change this, it already goes and it knows that this thing is bound to this loop over here, and is already gonna update its children and everything. So it's very, very much more easier to do things using Vue Js than using vanilla or plain JavaScript. So this is what I basically wanted to show you on this Let's Code session. And one question that you might have is why. So I could also have just made it like this if I would have been using I forgot the name of this casing, but like with underlines. This is snake case. So snake case is when you do all small downcase letters and you use underlines to separate the words, instead of this, which is camel case, because you're it's uppercase in the beginning of the words. So if I would have been using this on here, I would not even need this thing over here. But it's a common practice that in Ruby you use oh, I keep forgetting the name. It's you use underscores, you use everything. You use snake case, so that's the standard in Ruby, so to say, and so it's coming from the server and to here, and I would say even usually in JSON you use snake casing. So and JavaScript, on the other hand, you always want to use camel case, so that's why it's camel case over here. So I want to keep using camel case in the front end because that's what makes more sense. So that's why I'm converting these names over here. So there you go. This thing over here I can remove because I'm not using it. And just to double check whether this is really working, if I go to another window in incognito, because it's not gonna share cookies or anything, and I say I'm Mark, hello Jane. Oh, hi Mark. And there you go, it's indeed working. So if we look now at the source code of this, it's just going to be the style thing, and it's going to be including a JavaScript file. And this is the compiled. So it's really unreadable, but this is the compiled thing, the compiled version of our source code. And this compiled source code includes the Vue Js runtime. It includes this very file that we are editing right now. It also includes this index file. And yeah, that's it, because this project is just too small, only 2 files and some dependencies. And yeah, so that's basically it. That's how you do it. And that's it for this lesson. So that's essentially what I wanted to show to you and today, and for the time of this video it's enough. So there are a lot of improvements that could be done here. So for instance, first I'm using Vue Js version 2.6 because version 3 is almost being launched, but it's not there yet. And also we have this kind of weird thing here in the server. So the server is reading a static file. So this is a little bit weird, and the usual way to do this, or a better way, let's say, to do this would be to completely separate the front end from the back end. So here, see that in this code base, you're gonna have at the same time you're gonna have some Ruby files open, and you're gonna have some JavaScript files open. And if you have, for instance, I don't know, like in a software company, you're gonna have probably people who specialize in front end and people who specialize in back end, and it's not gonna work well if you have all together in the same repository. So we wanna separate that. So I'm gonna do that in a different video, not on this one, because quite some work to do that. So I'll address in a different video. And another thing that I would like to do in a much further video in the future is going to be how to deploy. But to be able to deploy this, I'd say that we first have to have the front end separated from the back end. So that's it for this video. Hope you liked it. Goodbye.